Immediately following our engagement, my brother, who was jealous, slept with my fiancée. They're being cut off because I snitched to the entire family. I recently got engaged at the age of 23 and ended the engagement within 2 weeks. The night after our engagement, my filthy brother tried to make me feel horrible by pointing out that my fiancée Riley, 23F, had slept with my older brother Jason, 27M. After nearly 3 years of dating, Emily threw everything away for my brother. She told me the night of our engagement that she was excited to marry me, but the very following day, she broke her promise by hooking up with my brother. I was furious about it, so I blocked her and ended our conversation by text. In order to prevent her from returning, I also changed the locks on my house. For the past year, Emily and I had been living together, and things had been going great. I therefore believed that the moment was appropriate to pop the question. She knows Jason and I have a fierce rivalry and don't get along at all, so I never imagined that she would end up betraying me for Jason, of all people. I hardly remember my dad because he died in an accident when I was a baby. Jason had at least spent some time with him, but I don't remember anything about him. Jason was my worst nemesis as a child and never liked me. He was a constant bully, and my mother, who was a single mother, had more important things to think about than dealing with our sibling rivalry, such as putting food on the table each day and paying the bills. My dad's brother, our uncle, came to visit frequently and did his best to assist. Even after my father passed away, my mother stayed in contact with his family because they had already lost their son and didn't need to lose their grandchildren. I still turned to my uncle, who was essentially the only father figure I've ever known. It was my mother for Jason. Although my mother didn't show preference, it was clear that Jason would be her choice if she had to choose. And because I also wanted to be my mother's favorite, that heightened our sibling rivalry. Regretfully, I always felt like a loser as a child. My academic performance was at best poor, and I was not very adept in athletics. In addition to being quite thin, I lacked any distinguishing skills. I therefore struggled to communicate to people, establish friends, and be popular because I was constantly insecure about almost everything. Being a very shy child, I remained to myself most of the time. Jason was the complete opposite. He excelled in the sports he played. Because of his athletics, he had a very different body from mine, big and sturdy, and he wasn't too awful academically either. It goes without saying that I felt even more ashamed to be his younger brother. I knew that everyone was continuously comparing me to him and believing that I was a loser in comparison, even if no one directly said it to me. I eventually came to accept living in his shadow and would simply let him walk all over me. During my early years, my self-esteem suffered greatly, and I was never able to bounce back. I hardly had any friends until my senior year of high school, and because I seemed strange, no one wanted to talk to me. Only until I graduated and enrolled in college did things start to improve for me. Since I was new there, no one recognized me as Jason's younger brother. Now that I was free from Jason's persistent tormenting and could finally be myself, I truly came into my own. It may sound corny, but I'm grateful that I was able to attend an out-of-state college where no one knew me. Because without that experience, I don't believe I would have become the person I am now. And since my uncle covered the cost of my undergraduate education, I owe him a debt of gratitude. My mom had informed me that she couldn't afford to send me to college so far away and asked me to choose a school that was closer to home, preferably in our city. However, my uncle stepped up and promised to cover me because I had my mind set. I graduated at the top of my class and made a lot of friends there. Although I had been at Jason's graduation ceremony, he did not attend mine, while my mother and uncle did. For obvious reasons, Jason and I didn't really stay in touch once we moved out. I loathed him because he turned my adolescence and youth into a complete horror, and he despised me without cause. We only saw each other on holidays or when we returned home for birthdays, and I was relieved to be free of him. We have been adhering to that agreement for years. Outside of our home, we didn't think of each other as family. However, after he lost all of his money a few years ago, I did send him a message and offer him consolation. After quitting his work, he attempted to launch his own company, but failed spectacularly, and my mother and uncle had to help him out because he was deeply in debt. In order to get back on his feet, he had to spend a few months living at our mother's house because he was unable to return to his previous employment. He eventually found a job, although it wasn't as good as the one he had before. However, he accepted it because he was in his 20s and felt ashamed to still live with his mother, and he wanted to leave the house. My uncle told me this, and it was quite distressing because his life had fallen apart entirely. I sent him a note of consolation because I felt sorry for him, but I believe he misinterpreted it and believed I was boasting or making fun of him. For the next several holidays, he ignored me and blocked me. Even though we didn't get along when we first met, we made an effort to be polite and at least exchange chilly greetings. But there was no communication between them after that message. Although I wish I could report that Jason's life improved, it didn't. He took his business's demise very personally, and each time I met him after that, he appeared to be in worse shape. After that, my uncle informed me he changed jobs 7 or 8 times, but he never seemed to be happy with any of them. His attire became shabby, and his behavior during family get-togethers was a tangible reflection of his mental state. Either he was drinking or he was silently staring at nothing. Although I say this from the bottom of my heart, seeing him in that position truly made me feel sorry for him. Even though I had always detested him as a child, it was now really hard to despise someone who was already suffering through so much. He always left early and didn't appear interested in the chats my uncle tried to have with him. After we had been dating for a year, I had also begun taking Emily to these events. There wasn't much we could do, but she was aware of Jason and even appeared worried about him. And 2 weeks before to our engagement, Emily and I were attending my uncle's birthday dinner at his house. I asked him beforehand to make sure he was comfortable with my asking her to marry me at his dinner party, and he said yes, so I went ahead. It was the ideal location because my uncle had a gorgeous home with a lovely garden, and the whole family would be there anyhow. She wouldn't be able to guess what was about to happen because I had even invited her parents, but they wouldn't arrive until after the proposal. I asked my uncle to marry me outside after he had cut the cake and everything. After she said yes, we returned inside to celebrate and tell everyone. Jason left a few minutes after I made the announcement, but I didn't give it much thought because I was too occupied with everyone else that night. Additionally, he typically leaves family events early, so it wasn't an unexpected event. After a wonderful evening, Emily and I returned home. After we returned home, as she normally does whenever we attend one of my family gatherings, she made no mention of Jason or his strange conduct to me. I fell asleep as soon as my head struck the pillow because we were both really exhausted and inebriated. However, I unintentionally woke up around 2 in the morning because I needed to use the restroom. Emily was still on her phone when I woke up, and when I asked her who she was speaking to, she told me that she was sharing the engagement with a few of her friends. I didn't suspect anything because that appeared harmless enough, and I quickly went back to sleep. However, 2 days later, Jason sent me a number of texts while I was at work. He had blocked me the previous time we spoke, so it came as a huge surprise. Only screenshots of his conversations with Emily were included, and during those conversations, they discussed getting together and hooking up, which is exactly what they did. She questioned Jason about why he wasn't there for the remainder of the evening after he contacted her to congratulate her on becoming engaged. In order to avoid interfering with my delight, he told her that he was simply upset about a lot of things and wanted to leave as soon as possible. He explained that we had never been friends and that he felt it was improper for him to be there for me on this special occasion. So he left. And really, I wouldn't have cared if he had stayed for the evening, even though he was trying to make himself appear like some dejected little puppy who wasn't wanted. All he wanted was for Emily to feel sorry for him so he could control her more easily, and that's precisely what took place. She began to comfort him, telling him that someone was out there to help him. She also apologized on our behalf if he felt guilty about what had happened, saying that I was a wonderful guy and that I didn't mean to offend him. Jason said that he didn't see the sense in searching at all because he would never be able to find someone like Riley. She reciprocated the cunning jerk's flirtatious behavior. All of a sudden, they were organizing a meeting. She had informed me that she would spend the night at her friend's house to tell her everything about the engagement, so I can be positive that she did visit his house the night after our engagement. Furthermore, all I needed to see were the photos Jason had sent me of Riley's clothes on his bed. I took the rest of the day off and returned home as soon as I got Jason's text, even though it was a horrible and nasty thing to do, and it truly caught me off guard. Even though I was crying violently, my eyes were watering. I made the decision to get the lock changed and began packing anything I could find. I put everything I saw that I knew belonged to Emily in a cardboard box, and when I was finished, I set it outside the door. It was almost time for Emily to return home by the time I finished everything. She had informed me that she would head straight to work from her friend's apartment, so I hadn't seen her since the night before. Naturally, though, I now know that she left Jason's residence to go to work. After a while, I concluded it wasn't worth it to break up with her in person, because she had cheated on me the day after I proposed, and she had vowed to stay with me for the rest of her life. I chose to text it off since I was so angry. I messaged her to let her know that I didn't want to be with her any longer because I knew she had slept with Jason. Since I didn't want to see her, I informed her that she disgusted me and that all of her belongings were just outside the door so she could simply pick up the bus and leave. She may return later to pick up whatever she might have left at home. After telling her that we were done, I blocked her and sent the message. Emily knocked on my door a few minutes after I sent that text, pleading with me to let her in. I could tell from the sound of her voice that she was devastated. She kept telling me that she understood she had made a big mistake, but that she just wanted me to listen to her, pleading with me to give her an opportunity to explain herself. It continued for roughly 30 minutes, and I found it very hard to remain composed and ignore it. However, she eventually left after trying everything, from pleading to manipulating to weeping. After the begging ceased, I waited for almost an hour before opening the door to make sure she wasn't still waiting outside, just to be safe. After I was certain she was gone, I got takeout, ate dinner, and tried to sleep. But I was too upset to close my eyes. I wanted to do something significant to punish Jason and truly teach him a lesson, but I was at a loss for ideas. I spent some time coming up with ideas on my own, but when I ran out of ideas, I took the simple route and sent those screenshots to everyone in the family, explaining that this is what my beloved brother Jason did to me. After that, I switched off my phone and went to bed. To be honest, I had no plan and didn't even lay down any requirements for my family. Therefore, whatever they did was entirely their own choice, and I had no involvement whatsoever. In response, all of the family members expressed their compassion and informed me that they had blocked him and intended to cut him off from all communication. Except for my mother, everyone was shocked to learn what Jason had done to me and wanted to comfort me. After I sent that message to everyone, she didn't speak to me for a few days, but she came to see me a few days later and appeared rather distressed. I was aware that unlike the others, she would not sit and comfort me. She had come to see me to discuss my behavior, therefore I was correct. She assured me that she could see why I was angry with Jason for whatever he had done. But even in that case, I should have kept the incident quiet. She cited Jason's already severe suffering as a grown man struggling to make ends meet due to a failed business and no chances for a romantic relationship. It was particularly sad since he was a really promising young man in his early years. But he would have a few flings here and there, nothing lasting. Therefore, no one could have predicted that he would end up being so unhappy and unsuccessful. On the other hand, no one could have predicted my current level of achievement. Regardless of my profession or relationships, my mother thought Jason did this, which I already knew. For background, I have a well-paying position at an architecture firm. I put a lot of effort into getting to where I am now, and Jason wouldn't be making less than half of what I do if he had done more research on his business before jumping in. To get right to the point, though, it seemed as though my mother was attempting to defend his actions as she was telling me all of this. I cut her off and asked if she was genuinely attempting to justify Jason hooking up with my fiancée the night after our engagement, since his life was depressing and hopeless. After a moment, she added that although it wasn't acceptable, I needed to be understanding and a little forgiving of his perspective. She continued by telling me that Jason was devastated and depressed as a result of the family severing their relationship with him. His sole activities were family get-togethers since he avoided contact with his pals, who were far more accomplished than he was, because he felt ashamed to be among them. It made me pleased, and because he had broken up with Emily and me, I didn't really care if he was unhappy. He deserved this, and I didn't feel sorry for him, but my mother thought I should act like the grown-up and try to persuade everyone to give him a chance. She also urged me to get in touch with him and make things right. I informed her that I was not involved in any of it and that she was insane to think that I would intentionally get in touch with the person who had destroyed my relationship. Even though she didn't really show it, I informed her that I knew she had favorites, and I really just snapped at her. However, she didn't need to make me feel so bad and push it in my face. I informed her that she wouldn't have been attempting to defend it and make it seem insignificant if I had done the same thing to Jason. She most likely would have been furious about it, and I was positive of that. We got into a heated argument when she made an effort to deny it, and she became quite irate and huffy during the altercation. After stating that she would not speak to me until I contacted Jason and attempted to resolve the matter with him, she left the house. My family members have been checking in on me for the past few days. My uncle has been messaging me every day, mostly. Emily occasionally messages me in an attempt to get my attention again, or at the very least start a discussion, but I haven't responded. Although I haven't blocked her yet, I know I must and will do so eventually. My mother is the only person I haven't spoken to since our heated argument, and I feel terrible about it. As I indicated earlier, even as a child, I had a feeling that my brother was her favorite because they shared an unexplained link. However, my mother never showed preference. That is, until now anyway. I simply don't understand what she said. Although I am happy with my life at the moment and don't feel melancholy or anything, I do want my mother to be in it, even though I don't think I share her viewpoint on the entire Jason and Emily scenario. What are your thoughts then? Ida for providing evidence of my brother's and my fiancé's infidelity to my family. Update 1. People have been hurt and have spoken up. I appreciate you reading the original post so painstakingly and leaving so many comments. My mother stating all of that really made me feel like I was somehow out of line for what I did. So I'm grateful that so many of you gave me excellent advice on what to do next and convinced me that I wasn't at fault. However, that's obviously not the case. Therefore, I don't need to get in touch with anyone. I discussed what my mother stated with my uncle as well. Since this was something personal and I didn't want to talk to anyone else about it, I hadn't told anyone earlier. However, after talking to my uncle, who is family, I felt much better. He informed me that he had also observed my mother's constant preference for Jason over me. Anyone with a brain could tell that she had a favorite, and it wasn't me, even though it wasn't always particularly evident. He informed me that he felt terrible about what had happened to me since he knew how much I loved Riley. But she didn't hesitate to hook up with Jason despite being aware of our connection. Although it was distressing, there wasn't much I could do about it, so I was actually kind of all right because I like to think I got away with it. Although I haven't completely moved on from her, I'm confident that I will. That's not really what I'm concerned about. But I don't want to lose the bond I have with my mother. However, I don't see how we can get along or make amends if she continues to act in this way and victimize Jason. Since he knows my mother and knows that she won't back down if she feels she is correct, my uncle suggests I should just give up on it. He told me that since she has been seeing Jason virtually daily since our family cut him off, it is highly improbable that she will come around and speak to me. Even though I was the one who lost a relationship, a significant one at that, because of him, it still hurt that she was making the extra effort to take care of him. However, I am equally aware that I have no control over the circumstances and that they are what they are. My uncle taught me to accept things as they are and move on, and I suppose that's what I must do. I attempted to reason with my mother and make her see things clearly, but she was only concerned with ensuring Jason had all the help he required and wasn't interested in the reality. I guess that's fine with me. Update 2. Emily had been contacting me about every other day for roughly a week after we split up, and it has now been nearly 2 weeks since I ended our relationship. However, she abruptly stopped, most likely realizing that pleading with me to take her back wouldn't work. Furthermore, I don't want to talk to her or hear her version of events. As far as I'm concerned, nothing justifies cheating, and that's the way it is. I'm not even sure why she felt that giving her side of the story would help. However, she contacted me yesterday to let me know that she would want to stop by and pick up some of the items that were left behind. We were now getting down to business rather than simply her pleading with me to talk to her and me ignoring all those texts, so I eventually responded at that point. Since I was wishing a day off anyhow, I told her she could stop by today and we could just get this out of the way. She stopped by about lunchtime and I could see she was in a lot of distress. Throughout her entire stay, she avoided making eye contact with me and appeared more worn out. There was silence in the home as she packed her belongings, and I sat on the living room couch without glancing at her. I also didn't say anything to her once I opened the door and allowed her in. She informed me that she was leaving after packing, And even though I had a lot to say to her, I simply said goodbye before returning to my phone. That was the only thing she deserved. She simply vanished forever after that. This just means that I won't ever need to speak to her again or be reminded of her by items in the house or her messages, which makes it feel strange yet good. After she went, I blocked her a few minutes later and chose to celebrate by watching our favorite movie alone. I haven't heard back from my mother yet, but I'm getting used to it over time. Since I'm not Jason, I can at least be certain that she would never have supported me in this situation. Therefore, anything I did for her would never be sufficient. And to be honest, I'm tired of trying. According to my uncle, they are no longer on speaking terms because they got into a disagreement lately when he was defending me and she didn't like it. It's unbelievable that she would jeopardize our relationship in order to keep standing up for Jason, even though she knows he's a jerk. I find it incomprehensible, but if that's what she wants, then fine. Update 3, I can't believe that until a month ago, I was still complaining about my mother's lack of affection for me. It's been a month since I last commented here. However, I've improved and I simply don't give a damn about my mother's opinion. She is just as selfish and delusional as my brother, which is probably why they get along so well. Both of them are terrible people, and I was very unlucky to have a relationship with both of them, but I no longer have any. And for that, I am incredibly grateful, as neither Emily nor they deserve someone like me. I was always too good for them, and it's their fault if they were unable to recognize it. I don't have to feel bad about anything. It's always their loss. And for that reason alone, I don't feel guilty about our family no longer communicating with them or inviting them to events. I'm so relieved that they no longer have any connection to any of us. I blocked Emily after she returned here to pick up her belongings for the final time, and we haven't spoken since. When they learned the true reason why our engagement had failed, the majority of our mutual acquaintances also did the same. However, my mother made an attempt to contact me a few days ago, and she still feels no need to apologize, which is absurd to even consider. She continued to focus on Jason's suffering and his diagnosis of clinical depression throughout our most recent session. I informed her that I could only provide her with the contact information of a psychotherapist and that I would not be speaking to our relatives to try to win their sympathy for him at this time. Then she became very sentimental and emotional with me in an attempt to control me. She put on a strong front by saying that she had already lost her husband and that she didn't want to lose the two most significant men in her life over a pointless argument over a girl. It was intriguing that she thought the argument was pointless and trivial because, from what I recall, it was about my fiancé, not some female. Furthermore, Jason had made the conscious decision to hook up with Emily in order to hurt my feelings, so it wasn't foolish or petty. Therefore, I believed that I had every right to be angry with him and to never talk to him again. I hadn't forced any of our other family members to do anything. Jason and my mother were cut off due to their own actions, and I had nothing whatever to do with it. Therefore, they should blame themselves if they wish to place the responsibility elsewhere. I told my mother this before I blocked her. I don't care if they go to hell. I can finally move on with my life.